Well, joining us now is the Shadow Justice Secretary, David Lammy, who believes that Floyd's murder has led to important conversations on race. Very good morning to you, Mr. Lammy. I just wonder whether we can just start by saying you must have in your thoughts this morning the Black Lives Matter activist, Sasha Johnson, who is critically ill right at this moment.
A terrible, terrible event in Peckham, where this young woman has been shot in the head. And of course, for her children, her family, her friends, prayers really this morning that she makes a speedy recovery. Very worrying indeed.
The Black Lives Matter movement has been so important over the past year. Obviously in existence before, but George Floyd's murder really sort of ignited that movement, didn't it? But what do you think has actually changed here in the UK?
Well, look, I mean, glass half full, glass half empty. On the half full, clearly conversations have begun in a way that we did not see before. I mean, I'm being contacted by charities, by FTSE 100 companies, determined to do more on diversity and inclusion. Deloitte's I spoke to last week, who put in place a Black Action Plan. And of course, the young people, particularly millennials and Generation Z, marching, campaigning, reading, incredibly articulate, white and black, about these important issues. But of course, it's the case that when you're talking about issues of systemic racism, these are deep and profound issues. And it will take considerable time and considerable effort to deal with the problems, for example, of women dying in childbirth at 4 times the rate if they're black than their white counterparts, to deal with the problems we've got in our youth justice system, 53% coming from a black, Asian, or minority ethnic background. That will take effort. That will take governments really leaning in and deepening those conversations to action, real action.
How do you change statistics, though, like that? How do you change this statistic? Black people specifically, almost 9 times more likely to be stopped than white people. 18 times more likely than white people to be searched under Section 60 of the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act. You know, there's an awful lot of leaning in to be done, isn't there?
Well, actually, it's really simple, because you could implement my review, the Lammy review that David Cameron asked me to do, which still has not been implemented in full. You could implement the Angelini review. You could revisit the Scarman inquiry or the Macpherson inquiry and implement policies that are still languishing. Actually, the truth is this country has been good at understanding what needs to be done. It's been far poorer at actually that sustained implementation of those independent reviews that have been done over a considerable time. And it's why the other theme that comes out of Black Lives Matter is black communities feeling tired and fed up, and actually the whole population feeling somehow that we're trapped in a circular discussion, and the action that we need is just not happening in that deep and profound and sustained way.
How tired and fed up were you when you were on LBC and a caller rang in to say that you could never be English? Just before you reply, just to remind people, here's what was said. How many people do you think there are like that in Britain today?
Look, I think we need to say that Jean, who I was speaking to, is 80. And I think there are probably many of us who would not want our 80-year-old granny on national television or ringing into LBC unmanned. But sadly, her views, and she talked about pollution a bit later on in the conversation. I mean, I think, you know, they were very prevalent, weren't they, in Britain in the 1950s when my dad came here as part of the Windrush generation. They're still around now. And we've got social media fanning those flames. The truth is, we have a monarchy. You know, the Queen and those before them came from Germany. When Prince Philip died, there was a lot of chat about the fact that he had come from Greece and was partly Danish. You can come to this country, be born in this country and, of course, become English or British if you're from another part of the UK. And I would hope that we have a civic nationalism that we can all be part of, not some sort of ethnic nationalism that means that you've got to have ancestors that were part of these isles going back hundreds and hundreds of years.
David Lemmy, I wonder what because you just referenced there social media and how that fans the flames. And we know there has been a massive issue with the abuse well, let me take one group, black footballers, for instance, receive on social media. There's a player for the team I support, Crystal Palace, Wilfried Zaha, you know well, who became the first black player not to take a knee before a match. And in a statement, he said, "I feel kneeling has just become part of the pre-match routine. At the moment, it doesn't matter whether we kneel or stand. Some of us still continue to receive abuse." It sort of goes back to your point at the beginning of the interview in that there's a lot that's going on in terms of the visual and not necessarily enough going on which is actually changing things. What do you think the government and social media companies still need to do?
Well, social media, I'm afraid we've got a long way to go. We do need proper regulation. It feels like the Wild West at the moment. When is the government going to finally bring on an online harm bills, get serious about the sanctions against those media companies? I personally have a lot of concern about anonymity as well, people hiding behind fake personalities and spreading such venom. So there's a lot of action that's needed in the social media space. It's polluting the discussion. It's making it much, much harder actually to move forward, not just as a nation, but globally.
And what about taking the knee? Is it something that still has power? Or is it something, as Zaha seems to suggest, which is just a gloss over something really nasty?
Well, I personally, it's something that I'm prepared to do in solidarity with black communities globally and people globally that want to take a stand. However, I recognise why he feels that way, because that's a common feeling in black communities. A frustration, a tiredness, as I've said, and for some, I think a bitterness, really, that there's a lot of chat, but a lot of empty rhetoric. And in that sense, it saddens me greatly that the progress that I felt that we were making a few years ago when David Cameron was leader of the Conservative Party, where he asked me to do a review, where Theresa May was commissioning the race disparity audit, that sense in which we were together, this was now a bipartisan issue, that has changed. The tone has changed and more division has come in.
OK, I just want to ask you, we had Tony Blair on the programme the other day. He wrote a very significant article for the New Statesman saying that he despairs at the state of your party, the Labour Party, under your leader, Sir Keir Starmer, saying Starmer lacks a compelling economic message. He's sensible but not radical, and he's in thrall to the woke left. The party needs a total deconstruction and reconstruction. And Keir has failed to counteract the woke left's spirit of intolerance and contempt for popular support. What did you make of Tony Blair's intervention? And is it helpful?
Well, look, I know both individuals. I work for the leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, and I want to see him in office. Look, let me say this. The Labour Party has been airing its dirty linen in public now since the dying days of Tony Blair's leadership and the problems that he had with Gordon Brown. That's over a decade. Until the Labour Party brings the washing in from the line and we can all move forward together in one direction, it will be very hard for the British people to put their faith in us. And so that's what I'd say.
And what do you think of, because your leader does seem to have problems cutting through, as we have seen from the most recent elections, but he's gone very personal. He's doing a fly-on-the-wall documentary, and as we know, he's just sat down with Piers Morgan for Life Stories, apparently a very emotional interview. Did you have concerns about that?
Absolutely not. I think I participated in
Ah.
that. So absolutely not. Look, let me just say, he's a great boss. He's a great guy. He has a compelling story and real heartache, I think, in his upbringing. He's a stoic person, so you don't always see it. But I think as people meet him and get to know him, and let's be clear, the defeat that we had in the last general election was massive. This was a tall order for any individual. There's a lot more to do over many years to get the Labour Party back to where we need to be. But I hope people watch the show, looking again at Keir Starmer. He's a serious, intelligent, decent man. And it's my real hope that he becomes Prime Minister of this country.
Okay, well, it's interesting because he doesn't seem to be connecting politically, but if he connects personally, that might be taking a leaf out of the Prime Minister's book. David Lammy, good to see you this morning. Thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thank you.